there was growing concern in the cancer world at the time, which UCSF and UCLA, these universities out in California, were starting to release some pretty profound genomics information on the gut that was suggesting that if you were lacking some bacteria in your gut or you were overexpressed with other bacteria, that we could predict which cancers you would get. And so if you had these bacteria, you were likely to get breast cancer. If you were missing these bacteria, you're likely to get colon cancer.
Yeah.
These correlations seemed completely out of left field, and they frankly were at the time, because even to this day, the dogma in the cancer field is that this is a genetic disease. It's a genetic injury that can lead to a cancerous process. So that's kind of the overall viewpoint that we were struggling through, and this was a clear anomaly on the horizon, that somehow, some way, these bacteria were involved in carcinogenesis and how these cancer cells were starting to form. And the realization came when we started diving into the story of soil. We were kale juicing my patients into oblivion. So much kale juice and cruciferous vegetables, and I was pretty sure they were going to
by kale juice.
Yeah, kale juice and sautéed kale, and broccoli sprouts, and just going after them. And a third of them would respond beautifully, just like the textbook suggested should. And not that there were really textbooks, but certainly the bulk of the evidence that we had coming out of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s around nutrition, it was clear that these cruciferous vegetables and the like had a profound cancer-killing effect. And so we had people that were responding beautifully to nutrition, but then there was this large chunk that were getting worse, not better. Yeah. And that was very confusing. Anytime you see the opposite effect of an intervention, you have to start wondering if we have the right model or paradigm that we're practicing in. So with that, we started to ask the simple question of, well, is there something, fundamentally changed in the kale that this population can't handle it? And that's when we started asking questions about the nutrients in the kale to find out that, wow, the nutrients have really dropped, specifically the alkaloids. And the alkaloids are a family of molecules that are made within the bacteria, the fungi of the microbiome of the soil and the microbiome of your gut, as well as in the plants. And so the idea that, wow, for the last 20 years, somehow we've completely destroyed our ability to make the chemotherapeutic compounds, the antihypertensives, the antidepressants that are naturally occurring alkaloids in our food have suddenly disappeared.
Because the soil is just changing so quickly.
That was the thought. It must be that we're killing the soil. And so as we were going through the soil science, we ended up finding a family of molecules made by the bacteria and fungi that looked to have the potential to have the same redox potential that I just described from the mitochondria. And this was a big goosebump moment for me, because I had been kind of really at one of the forefront universities for this mitochondrial apoptosis kind of model, and nobody had ever mentioned any other organism than a mitochondria producing some kind of compound like this. The one exception being nitric oxide, which is produced by the human body when you exercise. And so to have a new family of molecules was a profoundly kind of goosebump moment, especially when I found out that those were being made by the bacteria and fungi. The bacteria and fungi don't have mitochondria. And so this was a very interesting moment where you realize, okay, if there's going to be 40,000 species of bacteria that's living amongst 500,000 species of fungi, they would have to have some mechanism of species-to-species communication.
So by the microbiome talking, what you're in layman's terms, do you basically mean different parts of the body talking to each other in terms of energy?
Yeah, and even, at the more micro level, the fungi within your gut, it turns out you have a lot of fungi and parasites and bacteria that should be living inside your intestines. They need to be in crosstalk. They need to be saying, okay, I need a little niche help from Clostridium over here. I need a little Klebsiella over here. I need a little Candida over here. I could use a little bit of spirochete over here. And so the ecosystem should be constantly rebalancing, based on the hormonal state of the larger organism.
Yeah.
The human. It should be shifting based on what time of day it is. It should be shifting on the pH of the stomach contents. And so your microbiome should be this hugely dynamic, life force within you.
And are we not? And is it not very dynamic in this day and age?
we've slaughtered it. And the main rationale or mechanism by which we've done that is through the antibiotic science. And so the
Oh God,
antibiotics, you'll
yeah.
remember, are made by fungi. And so bread mold was the one that produced the first one, which was penicillin. And so the molds will produce antibacterials. The antibacterials should produce the anti-yeast and anti-molds. And so we now have whole populations that are overgrown with weed-like organisms, including yeast and other invasive bacteria, because they're lacking this microbiome balance.